everybody, and welcome to Virtual Trek Con. This is the Star Trek podcast panel with Larry Nemecek of the Trek Files, Jarrah Hodge of Women at Warp, Brandon-Shea Mutala of The Line, Bill Smith of Trek Geeks, Cirroc Lofton of The Seventh Rule. My name is Husk, also of The Seventh Rule. The reason I overemphasized Women at Warp was because on our first take I said Women at Wharf, and everybody sat there stone-faced except me. How are you guys doing?
Good. Awesome. How you doing, man?
Doing well.
Great. Let's just open this up very quickly with the toughest questions of all. What is your favorite Star Trek series? Just so we can get an idea of who we're talking with. Jarrah, what's your favorite?
It depends on what I want to feel about the universe that day. And I would say that like 90% of the time when I'm feeling pretty good, it's Deep Space Nine. And 10% of the time when I'm just like, I really just want comfort food, it's TNG, because that was the one that I first watched when I was little.
Nice. What about you, Brandon?
Definitely Deep Space Nine all the way. So,
not even a close second, huh?
Not even a close second. You know, like when I first watched Deep Space Nine, I was probably a little too young to appreciate it for what it was. And upon every successive rewatch, I love the characters more and more. I love the show more and more. And I'm not just saying this because Cirroc's on the show, but Deep Space Nine all the way.
If you guys want me to leave, you can say whatever you really feel.
What about you, Bill?
I may have grown up a TOS guy, but I am absolutely a Niner for sure. Deep Space Nine has been my favorite ever since it started airing.
Wow, we're really stacking the deck here. Sorry, guys, we didn't know this was going to happen. Larry Nemecek, you're gonna break this streak, aren't you?
I'll try if you don't kick me off. No, I like that. I like Jarrah's analogy of the buffet, because when you were around for the original series and you had the original series for 20 years and there was nothing else, it's hard for that not to be your comfort food. And then you write a book about Next Generation and then you're rooting for everybody else. I mean, it's hard to have favorites, but over the years, DS9 has kind of emerged out of I love all my children, but maybe I have a guilty pleasure. I'll say DS9. But I really enjoyed Picard, even with some of the criticisms that we have about all the shows.
Wow.
But original series is still, it's like if I just want, comfort food. I like that.
So Deep Space Nine with the side of original series, it sounds like, right?
I would say that, yes.
Cirroc, are you going to break the streak and pick something other than Deep Space Nine?
I say Twilight Zone. Is that an option?
No, it has to be a Star Trek series.
The original or the new one?
The original. No, I'm going to go ahead and I have to, since I've only really watched DS9 so far, I don't have too many other references. I've done one little Picard, a little Discovery, but they have to fully blossom out for me to put them on my list. I got to see where the arc of the whole idea and thought is. Right. It's just a beautiful thing that there's so many options to choose from, and that there are, little something here for somebody, a little something there for somebody. I think each one of them are significant in its own way. As far as the kind of groundbreaking work that they did, they meant something for the time, at the time. And what I really like about DS9 is that over time, it does have that kind of meaningful resonation work with people. It resonates in the longer terms. So I love DS9. Right now is the time that we watch in the social environment. I know you guys see with all the things that are happening. It's great that we were able to get that kind of a show done at the time frame that we did in the time period, kind of ahead of the curve of what we see happening in the world today.
Always way ahead of the curve. We keep noticing that. Yeah.
I got to show Ira one time here. So I got the Cardassian tattoo on my arm here.
Yeah.
And I got the Bajoran tattoo on the other arm there.
So, and you always keep them apart, right?
All right, so I guess I'll break the streak then. I did not expect this. I do think Deep Space Nine is the best series. I also think it's the best written series, but it's actually a very close second for me as far as my favorite behind The Next Generation. That is the one that I kind of grew up with, the one that I saw first. But yeah, I don't know. Deep Space Nine probably maybe deserves it better, but anyway. So
comfort food. I like the way Jarrah put it. It's just when you grow up with something, it has an attachment to it, like the age and the times that you were experiencing at that moment. So that's, a lot of that has to do with comfort, life experiences.
Totally. So we're going to go around the panel very quickly and just tell us a little bit about, first of all, what city you live in, because I always find that to be fascinating. But also, what's your podcast and how long have you been doing it? We'll start with Jarrah, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I live in Ottawa, Canada, which is a very active Star Trek community. We have 1 million people, but we have at least 2 Star Trek clubs. And it's a very geeky town. I don't know why. Maybe it's the government thing, but my podcast is Women at Warp. We're one of the Roddenberry Star Trek podcasts, and we've been going for just over 5 years. And time goes fast. But we started out, myself and my co-hosts, getting asked to guest on various podcasts because we were tweeting and writing about Star Trek on the internet. And at that time, there were very, very few women hosting any Star Trek podcasts. And we heard each other on other podcasts and decided to connect and really got along and decided, why don't we start our own thing and celebrate women in Star Trek, but also share women's perspectives and put kind of a feminist lens onto the analysis. And I think what we try to do is explore what I think is a really, really interesting tension in Star Trek, that it puts forward this kind of utopian view of the future where everyone's equal, but at the same time that it has been and continues to be crafted by 20th and 21st century humans that are largely from more privileged standpoints. And so we like to kind of tease apart where there's some disconnects there and what might be done differently, and hopefully help continue this dialogue of women in the fandom shaping things to be better going forward as Star Trek evolves.
Awesome. It's a great elevator pitch. Brandon, what about you?
Well, currently, I'm living in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, and we're right kind of in the middle of the country. It's a very nice rectangle. If you ever look at a map, it's a rectangle. And I've had my hands in a few different Star Trek podcasts. Right now, I'm on a show on Trek FM called The Line, which is all about Star Trek Picard. And we're kind of in a loose hiatus for over the summer until we get to the next season. But we go week by week as that show is airing, and we do a pretty deep dive into the podcast. And that was a lot of fun. But I think the other 2 podcasts that I worked on were probably the ones that I was the most proud of. I had a show called Melodic Treks on Trek FM, which is all about the music of Star Trek. Cool. And I got to do a lot of really great interviews with composers and record label producers and stuff like that. And it was really neat to get some of the behind the scenes on music. And right out of the gate, I had an interview with Ron Jones, who did some of the classic music for Next Generation. But then also I worked on a show called Warp 5 for Trek FM for about 110 episodes, and that was all about Star Trek Enterprise. Right. And I had some really great interviews with some of the guest stars on the show, and it was a whole heck of a lot of fun. And we tried to bring as much love as we could to Enterprise, because I think it's a very underappreciated show, but it's nice to see that it's starting to get a good solid fan base now that we've had, it's streaming on Netflix and stuff for a couple of years. So those were all on Trek FM.
Got it. That's really cool. When you said the Warp 5, I think we could kind of guess that's got to be Enterprise. That's really cool. And yeah, Enterprise is totally underrated. What about you, Mr. Bill Smith?
Let's see, I'm in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and I've pretty much lived in New Hampshire most of my life. Trek Geeks was actually born about 5 years ago or so. It's Star Trek through the lens of a 25-year friendship with my good friend Dan Davidson. And it's interesting, we started talking about doing the podcast 6 years ago this weekend. And I went to him and said, hey, we always laugh so much and we talk a lot of Star Trek. Would you ever want to do a podcast? And he said in this order, no, what's a podcast? And that's exactly how Trek Geeks was born. Since then, we started our own podcast network. We now have 7 shows with 8, 9, and 10 coming before the end of 2020. We never expected to be anything more than two idiots talking about Star Trek, but yet here we are. I think it's a testament to what Star Trek means in our lives and in our fandoms, and all because I asked Dan a question he had no idea how to answer.
Nice. Nice. Cirroc, that kind of sounds similar to our story of the no wait.
It's pretty amazing.
Actually, we'll just go to you then next, Cirroc. The seventh rule. Tell us about it for a second.
Well, the seventh rule was, for me, it started as a phone call from Aaron Eisenberg, and he just basically reached out to me. He said, "Hey, how you doing? Would you like to do a podcast?" And
did you say no? What's a podcast?
Podcast.
Yeah. Well, I knew what a podcast was, but I just didn't really want to do a podcast at the time, and I didn't think it would be interesting for us to be doing it. I didn't see the appeal. I didn't understand why people would want to hear about these things and these stories. But Aaron and I have a really good rapport, and had a great conversational relationship. So we were able to talk, and things came easy for us. It wasn't really like pulling teeth. So that was the thing that really appealed to me, was the fact that I'd be able to work with him. And then it became a little bit even more interesting to, start thinking about Star Trek again and get back in touch with my fans and the people that support me and the community that really loves the franchise. So I started to look at it through that lens, and he really kind of bent my elbow and decided, hey, I'll give it a try. He really sold it to me as, you'll just be like 30 minutes one day of every 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, okay, that's all. Okay, sure, no problem. That didn't turn out to be the case, but I have loved the journey, and Ryan and I have continued the legacy that Aaron started, and it's been a real pleasure working with Ryan, and it was great to honor Aaron and his memory and his legacy.
Yeah, Aaron was a pretty aggressive guy when he had an idea, right? He's like, it'll be like 40 seconds out of your month. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Like, just whatever.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, just chew gum, whatever. What about you, Larry? Tell us about your podcast, parenthetically with an S.
Yeah, you're going to make me follow Cirroc. Okay. No, the Trek Files is, this is kind of blooming. That's the one I should say the most about, though. That's on the Roddenberry Network, same as Women at Work. And what's odd is, I think I was at a convention in Phoenix the first time I heard the word podcast, and I was like, well, that's interesting. So you record things that people download, okay, and listen to. And I don't know, it struck me a lot like the Crystal Set hobby radio people, in the 20s. And then within 10 years, there was network radio, and then there was network TV. And I thought, okay, well, this may lead somewhere, but it's fine. And then 5-10 years later, Chris Jones started the Trek FM network, asked me to come on. Because, the Star Trek world had blown up. There was nothing, we were in the fallow times. There was no Star Trek. Everything I used to work on had blown up, and the digital revolution was coming. And I was trying to figure out what life was about. And I was like, okay, fine, sure, I'll go talk Star Trek. That's easy. And after about 2 or 3 years of being a guest occasionally, he said, the episodes with you are the ones that are most downloaded. And I was like, okay, I should take this information and do something with it. But I was in no shape to do the tech and produce, So I said, for right now, I will just keep being a guest. And that was like the ancient days of podcasts. So that was actually when there were more fan films than podcasts. And now it's,
wow.
Taken over. I know. Now this is so funny. There's like a new podcast every week now, and the bar is going up, which is great. But I feel like it's 2015 in fan film world when they were announcing a new fan film every week. But I said I'll do my own podcast when I can do something that's really new and different and not just the same old. And I thought someday there'll be video podcasts, and I should maybe do that. That'll be something. So anyway, but in the middle of trying to get to that point, Rod came to me and John Champion and said, Rod has this idea to get his dad's papers out more than them just sitting in a library. why don't we animate that as a podcast and have guests on? And I said, cool. And they said, we want you to do it. So I didn't, they came to me while I was busy trying to think of what else to do. And which also happened at the same time I started doing a live Facebook show on Tuesdays, which isn't a podcast, but it's kind of there, called Trekland Tuesdays Live, about 2.5 years ago. And now also do live support live with Dr. Ali Matu on Saturdays, which we just started, and I'm very proud of. But that's a camera show too. So I feel guilty because I'm not doing the producing on. If I can one-man band it, I'll do it. But other than that, the Trek Files is John producing, so and the Roddenberry weight behind it. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a way to keep interviewing people and get them out immediately, and occasionally, hopefully, make a little history too. So that's been fun. And when we found the human Isis, the Catwoman,
I love
April Patron.
yeah. I love the Trek Files idea. I didn't know that. That's really cool. It's a really great idea.
Yeah.
Also, just quick background on myself. I also do the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton. Also, previously with our brother, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, and I kind of had the same situation where Aaron and I had always kind of wanted to go into business together. We were always kind of bouncing ideas around, or I'd cast him in movies I was producing, or we'd read certain scripts, for future possibilities. And then he was like, hey, I want you to do this podcast with me. I want to do this podcast. And, there's a lot of things on our plate. So we said, okay, yeah, maybe, but yeah, like Cirroc, I was like, I don't even podcast. Isn't that the thing that people like? I didn't know there's this whole world, but then when he finally comes back and says, okay, I got another guy, I got Cirroc. Now do you want to do it? Kind of like, because we're like, well, let's find the other guy. And I was like, there's really no better fit on the planet than Aaron and Cirroc, especially because I'm already friends with both of them. And it's, a match made in heaven. It's Jake and Nog. So I would have really been a complete idiot to say no to that. So I said yes, even though I am an idiot, but not a complete one. And it's been a blast, and I've really enjoyed working with Cirroc for a million reasons that we talk about on our show. Really, really been an absolute pleasure and delight. And we've learned a lot. So I think we're the newbies of this panel, which is kind of why we want to have this panel of all you pros. I did want to ask, number one, especially, for anybody that's learning to podcast or they want to begin podcasting, what was like one major surprise that you didn't expect? Something that, whether it was good or bad, or just something that happened in the first week or month or year that you just didn't expect about podcasting. It's like Brandon's nodding, so you've got something for us, right?
Sure. Yeah. The way that we produce our podcast, I was really surprised with the editing and what it takes on the back end for editing. It was really time consuming at the beginning, and I've learned tricks as I've gone along to shorten how long it takes me to edit things. But at the beginning, like, it was a slow going process, and my first episode ended up being 2 because I got to the halfway point and it was due that night, and I'm like, okay, to be continued, and I sent off the first half of the interview and then spent the next week working on the next half of it. So it was just kind of a surprise to get into it, because I'm like, holy smokes, this is not quite what I was expecting it to be. And the reason why ours was a little bit more is because with our audio, we generally do independent audio tracks. And I know that like Zoom recordings and stuff have improved so that you can use the audio from online. But I still prefer to use my locally recorded audio myself for my podcasts. Sure. For what I do. Yeah. That was a big surprise.
Definitely more production than we expect. What about you, Jarrah? Did something really surprise you, or something you never expected?
Well, I definitely agree that you don't realize how much work it is necessarily, especially if you aren't physically in the same city as your co-hosts. We are all spread out all over North America, and that extra adds a lot to the editing and the planning and like trying to communicate across time zones. But we did right away make a decision. We were only going to do bi-weekly because we all, even though you call us pros, I feel like you have to like make a living off of it to call yourself a pro. That was never the illusion. We all have other jobs.
Technically, that's absolutely correct. I guess I should call you experts or
sure.
something else.
Veterans.
Yeah, veterans.
Yeah, but I guess I was also just surprised by how warm and open the Star Trek community was about a new podcast. I mean, certainly there's a lot more now than there were then, but I feel like that has still continued. And I see new people launching podcasts, and I see people really willing to explore what new people and new voices are offering. And I have generally been super thrilled with people, coming up at conventions and sharing their stories about what a particular episode meant to them. And it's still like surreal to me. I had no idea. We're just four fans talking about Star Trek.
It's kind of what we do on our spare time anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bill Smith?
That's almost hard because there are a couple of things that I learned right away that I wasn't necessarily counting on. The first of which was how quickly somebody will tell you suck. We put out our first episode, and then within about a week and a half time, we put out our second episode, and we got our first email in with feedback. And the feedback was, you guys really need to be more like Mission Log because they're a great podcast, ... And that's always stuck with me. The very first piece of feedback we got was bad. And it told me that when you release these things out into the ether, you never know how they're going to land with people. They may love it, they may hate it. And there is no shortage of people who will go out of their way to tell you how much they dislike it, especially when they elect to download it for free. So as long as you are going into it with a reasonably thick skin, I mean, respond to feedback. I mean, take the constructive criticism where you can and try to improve what you're putting out. But there are always going to be those people who go, nope, this show sucks. Nope. But you have to prepare yourself for that. The other thing I learned is that it's like Jarrah said, that this fan community is warm and engaging and welcome to new content like this, and they will find you and they will tell other fans. And that's one of the most positive things I've discovered about this fandom. People discover our show, which is now in the 200 range as far as episode goes, every single week. And we hear from people every single week say, "Oh, I just started binging all of your episodes." I'm like, really? I mean, one, you might need therapy. Two, I don't know if that's healthy. But
it's a pandemic. Take it.
Yeah, it's got to be the pandemic. It's the Rona time. So we're grateful for that, but it's made us aware of the fact that somebody is discovering us for the very first time pretty much every week, and that's still pretty humbling.
When you said that your first piece of criticism was that you should be more like another podcast, I couldn't help it. I immediately made a face because that's kind of the next thing I want to talk about is how cool it is to have your own spin and make your own podcast unique and how you do that. But Larry, who was the first person that talked shit about your podcast? No, I'm just kidding. What was the biggest surprise for you?
I just want to tell Bill something, because the way I always think about Trek Geeks is kind of like you are the AM sports talk radio of podcast kind of bit. And I just going to say that's kind of pioneering it. Although there's all kinds of flavors and tones out there. Jarrah and everybody talking about the post. Some folks, if it's a mom and pop basement back in our garage and they just record it and put it out there. And then there's all these different varieties of, the levels of post you put into it to whatever you're going to do. And whether you clean it up or you add music and sound effects or whatever you do. And some people put that out there and they're happy to do it and it's just their hobby. And some people want to have a more finished, sound, and that's cool too. But the market's going to judge, and everybody's going to, downloads are going to pile up for whatever you're doing, whether it's really quality or it's a new tone or a new voice or a new angle or whatever. And it's mostly all for free, which is kind of amazing. So all that to say, but what I get a lot of times is people, the way we used to do on Communicator, when I edited the Communicator magazine, we'd be at a convention or something and I'd say, "Oh, hi. And oh yeah, I love the Trek Files," or fill in the blank. "Oh, really? Okay." Yes, "I love it, love it, love it." And it's kind of like when people would sign your high school yearbook and say, "Oh, stay just you're a senior, stay just the same, don't ever change." And I go, "What, stagnate? What do you want me to, it's like, come on." Like, I beg people to give me a critique, and occasionally they do, but it's like, some people they're being polite. So I don't know. I've had you suck letters about stellar cartography. My book I did once. I had a really amazing long letter that was on Google for a long time. But the thing that surprised me most, to answer your last question, was getting all into a head about trying to have all this stuff perfectly done at the beginning, and including down things like taglines and catchphrases and all of that. And the cool thing is planning all this stuff, but then still you actually put some out and you have some feedback from people, or you're just talking and something comes out. And the first week I was saying, hello, Star Trek fans and background fans and history buffs. And it popped into my head to say, and all you Trekophiles, spelled with an F, and I was like, and the minute I said it, I was like, oh my God, that's our tagline. And the first time to actually have people come up at cons and say, I'm a Trekophile, I was like, oh my God, it worked. It's like to have things like that actually click in and to know that, yeah, people do care. There's people downloading and all of that, and it grows, but to have people, care, or to have people, I came up with Trek Well for Tuesdays Live, and to have people now beat me to it when they're in something, or there's a chat room and people say, Trek Well, everybody, trademark Larry Nemecek, and I'm going, oh. So, hopefully some things are, now, presuming what you're doing is worth sticking, hopefully some of it is sticking with people, which is cool.
I wasn't sure
if you wanted criticism, Larry. I'm writing an email right now.
Thank you.
I've already sent mine.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Harry Trekwell of Star Trek Picard, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Cirroc, what shocked Cirroc the most about or surprised you?
Well, what surprised me is that so many people speak the same language. The Trek language is kind of a universal thing, and all of us are coming from different backgrounds and different parts of the world and different parts of different parts of the world, and we all have this kind of way to communicate where we understand based on these common experiences that we have, these shared experiences. So the biggest thing for me is how deeply impacted people are by the shows about the shows, the discussions, the meetings at conventions, just the relationships that are built. So that's what's surprising for me, and also how intelligent the Star Trek family is. I'm really surprised because everybody is very well versed in so many different aspects of science and math and just conceptual things that outside of my even understanding, but how well that they understand it, how well they understand the morality issues that we talk about and we discuss, and just the way they absorb all this information, digest it, and really process it. That's the thing that's surprising for me. It's a very literate and intelligent fan base.
Right. Who knew Star Trek nerds were so smart, right? So
it's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
No, for me, I think I was most surprised by just how much fun it was week in and week out. Like, it wasn't just a fun thing that you do 2 or 3 or 4 times and then you get tired of it. It was continuously fun, and even more so, and something to almost look forward to when you're doing it. I should have guessed, because I like talking about Star Trek and I talk about Star Trek to anybody that'll listen. But who knew if you just hit record while you do that, it would still be fun. But I did want to talk about really quickly, like, one thing, Cirroc and I and Aaron and Jared, when he was on our podcast, when we first started, less than a year and a half ago was when we first started, I remember thinking, we really want to have our own spin on this, even though I didn't know anything about podcasting. But as we mentioned before, it's somewhat similar to, say, like AM sports radio, which I did listen to and have listened to for decades because I'm a big sports junkie. And I noticed, on ESPN and Sports Center and AM sports radio from the Bay Area and all that, they all have kind of like their own spinner or something that they say every time, or a little trick that they do, And so I knew that I wanted to have certain isms that only our show does, like a catchphrase or like a game that we do at the end, or a hot seat question that everybody gets, So for us, we do, for example, like the trivioids at the very beginning, where I just throw out 3 random things about the episode we just watched, or at the end of the show, Cirroc guesses what the IMDb rating is. Things like that people know when they listen to our show, they're going to get this, and it's kind of our own voice or our own spin. And I just kind of want to know if you guys, I know you definitely tell us whatever your own spin is. I can guess Jarrah's, but definitely tell us what your own spin is, but also kind of like what additional flavor or thoughts or things that you like to bring to your show. We'll start with Jarrah, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, well, when you were talking about just like catchphrases and stuff, we have my co-host Sue has a background in math and science, and so she has Sue's Science Corner, where she lays into the science bits where things don't totally make sense. But we all bring our own interests to it as well, and I guess my role is kind of the encyclopedia. So I'm the one with the big Star Trek reference library that's looking all this stuff up before all the podcasts. But I think that those pieces kind of all come together. My other co-host Grace, it's not an official segment, but we refer to like Grace's murder corner, because she's got all the murder trivia in there. So crossing together trends of popular podcasts, and it's overall just makes it gets a little bit more personality as you get going. I think when you start out, you're just kind of getting to know each other as well, and as things develop, you start to know where other people's sense of humor is, and things just grow from there.
Did you say that Sue was the name of the science lady?
Yeah. Does
Sue ever say after an episode, be like, no, that science was nonsense, there's no explanation for that?
Yeah, that's basically Sue's Science Corner. Yeah, we have Sue's Science Corner, and then Sue explains why the thing doesn't make sense.
Yeah, good. She's like, mushroom drives. I don't know. What about you, Larry?
Oh, well, I mean, I come out of just being a journalist and a theater trained person, and interview and facts and news and the fan collecting trivia, but also stacking lists and doing encyclopedic type, all the things I'd done over the years. And what's about the time I thought, well, this has gotten old, and when the shows all went away and we got the fallow times after Enterprise was canceled, it was kind of like, well, there's no point in any of this now. The fandom's going to dry up and all this, and then it didn't, which was awesome. Things managed to keep going, and then the Kelvin movies came along, and then I realized the value in the Kelvin movies because it kept fandom going and got respect. But I realized after the 19th time I'd see some news story pop up and go, somebody would say, blah, blah, blah. I go, that's not new. That was the so-and-so, and that was the first album came out in 79, or something. And then I went, dummy, it's new to somebody. If this is going to be a living, breathing fandom, and we have new waves of fans coming, people don't, it's not their fault that they don't know. We talk so much about gatekeeping now, and it was like, this gave me a reason to keep going. It was like, people need to know this gently, because they're not born with it. It's not the DNA, and not everybody has read The Making of Star Trek, although that used to be like a given, or they don't know. So a lot of it was more like, let's try to connect some dots for people and take a big picture and stand back. And I kind of use that in some of my taglines for especially on Tuesdays Live. But the Trek Files is all about that. It's pulling out, this is not just cool because it's dusty history. It's an old piece of faded paper in one of Gene's folders somewhere. Let's make it relevant to today. And whether it was to Gene or from Gene or somebody in the orbit, on the Trek Files, it's like, let's make it relevant for today. But that's really what I try to do with everything, is take the context. And I mean, my personal hero is Will Rogers, and he's a 20s, 30s, pioneer in a lot of things that deserves to be remembered. And I docent over at his house. If you're ever in LA, everybody come. I will give you a backstage tour of the ranch house. But
did you say I dose over at his house?
I docent over. I am a docent.
I was like, all right, let's hear more about this.
Stopping me. The reason I love you, yeah. And I didn't say I dox. I said I dose. Now, the reason I love that is because it's like the things that are, I think, as we are finding out the last few years, there is so much history that has been lost, stolen, or strayed. And some of it's, very, naive stuff. And some of it's very oh, I wish I had known this. I just had a Juneteenth moment this week where I finally found out what Juneteenth was. But so much of history is not boring. I'm mad at teachers that made it boring dates and names to memorize for tests, when history is it's like a security blanket. It's like, when something is scary right now, it's like, guys, we've actually been through this before in a certain way, or we knew this and we forgot it, or we knew it was buried, or whatever. And that's a macro. In a micro way, that's what I enjoy doing.
Right.
Star Trek, yeah.
Brandon, what's your spin for your show, and what kind of little bits do you add to make your show unique?
I try and bring a little bit of humor to my podcast. Like I'll throw like a non sequitur out there that usually tries and breaks up, the monotony of talking Star Trek. And I sometimes go off the rails with that. But I think the thing that I brought to one of my podcasts the most, that I was really proud of, ended up being some of our least downloaded episodes on Warp 5. And I'm a big film fan. And one really cool thing about Star Trek Enterprise is that they were always watching movies on the rec deck, right? So it took us a long time to go through them, but we went through every movie that they talked about on the show, and we did a podcast on those movies. And we didn't really tie it into Star Trek. We just talked about the movies as movie fans who would go to see a movie, and then you'd catch a slice of pizza afterwards and just talk about the movie. And so I think there's about 13 or 14 movies that we ended up going through. One of them was the pilot episode for Kung Fu, The Legend Continues, and because they watched a Kung Fu episode in an episode once. And then because of that, we ended up having this reoccurring joke that my co-host Patrick had never seen Spaceballs. And then so as our second last episode of Warp 5, we did an extra movie night on Spaceballs. And so it kind of brought that to it, and which ended up with nothing to do with the show at all. But I really enjoyed bringing that to Warp 5 because it was one of the cool things that they had for that series, and they were our least downloaded episodes. Like they were quite a bit less than the rest, but I did them for me, and it was, there we go, Pizza the Hut, I love it. So I was happy to bring that to it because the people that did enjoy it really enjoyed it, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Bill, same question to you. This is Pizza the Hut for everybody that doesn't know, but everybody here knows. Pizza the Hut, you're delicious, or whatever.
With Trek Geeks, Larry actually wasn't far off. Trek Geeks is actually patterned after afternoon drive radio. And it is predictable in that it is specifically segmented. Those segments, although not timed, do fall within specific time limits. Which I don't necessarily keep a clock going, but I know pretty much how long they're going to be, and I know we need to wrap it up. But then it also, because it's called Trek Geeks, it has to be a little bit about Dan and I. So, we trade insults for a good chunk of the show in between talking about Star Trek. But at the end of every episode, there is anywhere between a 5 and 10 minute outtake of our, off podcast discussion that specifically is about Dan and me. It allows the listeners to peek behind the curtain a little bit and understand who we are as people. Plus, it also rounds out the framework of our friendship because we have known each other for so long. So we knew that it had to be an experience where people not only got Star Trek discussion, because there are hundreds of Star Trek podcasts, if not thousands, but there had to be something different which made it about us. And that's really the thing that kind of separated it in our minds.
Yeah. Cirroc, what do you bring that's unique? I already covered kind of what we do differently on our show, but you personally, what do you like to bring?
Oh, I like to bring my little drawings that I make while I'm watching the episodes. My little doodles.
They're so good.
Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. But I don't know. It just makes me feel like I'm really a part of it when I start drawing the things that I like. See, last week they debuted the Defiant on the episode we were watching.
And I just did through it. You're gonna pull it up.
I did my little rough. It's a very rough sketch. It's actually no details at all. But it was my first time drawing a little Defiant. So there he is.
Oh, nice.
There he is.
Nice.
So it's fun for me to just kind of like get involved with the story and do my little kid drawings, it actually brings me back to my youth when I did a lot of drawing, and I don't now draw as much as I used to. And watching the episodes now allows me to either, draw a lot of wardrobe, which you see that I'm always making observations about wardrobe and clothing styles and the background sets.
Right.
So those are the things that I really kind of like to pay attention to, because I realize the genius behind all the levels of the production that goes into the shows. All the actors get a lot of credit, the writers get a lot of credit, but I mean, everybody who's involved really comes with their A game and brings so much. And so that's why I'm really appreciative about paying attention to those details and acknowledging everybody's role.
Did you doodle during the filming? Did you back in the day?
Yeah, I did a lot of doodling.
Do you have them?
Yes, I have them. Some of them my mom has.
Wow, good question.
She frames a lot of that stuff, and
You should do
yeah.
something with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up
Star
with
Trek
a really
fans would
good
eat
artist.
that up.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not the good artist out of my group of friends. My actually best friend Damon works for Sony or something. He's one of the best cartoon artists. Worked on Batman and Spawn and all these cartoons, and he's like pretty amazing. And so he was the guy that I was his understudy. He would do all the drawing, and I would try to keep up with him. And I wasn't as good, but I would do, I would learn. And so I've always had a little passion for art and for drawing, and
right.
Wardrobe.
But this dude didn't spend 7 years on Deep Space Nine, though. So your art's worth more.
And this is Cirroc Lofton.
Yeah. Well, he's a professional artist, so I got to give him a little bit more credit than that. But he's actually the one that was a big Star Trek fan and got. Oh, cool. When I first got the job, I told him, I'm going to be working on this show, this Star Trek show. He's like, "You're on Star Trek?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what is it about?" He's like, "Are you serious?" And then he started, giving me the whole rundown on Next Generation and Marina Sirtis, who, he had a crush on, so he passed that on to me. And so he was giving me all the rundown and the feedback. So he was really one of my, key counselors during the moment when I first started working on the show. Yeah. It was special to have him involved during that time.
Hey, we only have about 1.5 minutes left, but very quickly, Cirroc, something you do bring that I don't know if you're really too aware of compared to other podcasts is that not only do you bring obviously the I was there kind of memories that some podcasts have those, but you are this rare commodity to where you've never watched Deep Space Nine. So we get to hear somebody's very first thoughts of like the first time watching a show, but also combined with the guy that was there. It's this really cool dichotomy that's fascinating for me, at least. So since we do only have 1 minute left, in one sentence, here's the tough question. We have season 3 of Discovery coming. We have season 2 of Picard somewhere down the road. We have Lower Decks coming, the animated series from the Rick and Morty producer. We've got a Starfleet Academy series coming. We've got Pike Down the Pike coming. What else do we have? Section 31. I think there's also going to be another animated one called Prodigy on Nickelodeon, right? So the question is, which 2 of those, in one sentence or less, not less than a sentence, please, which 2 are you most looking forward to seeing? Jarrah.
I'm going to go with Disco and Section 31 because I like that Disco's raised the bar on diversity, and I love Michelle Yeoh, so I'm going to go with sticking in that universe.
Nice. Brandon?
The ones that I'm actually excited for the most, I'm definitely excited for Lower Decks I can't wait to check that out. And you didn't mention it, but I'm sure we're going to get more of them. I'm actually excited for more short treks.
Short treks.
I really love the short trek format, and I think we can do a lot of creative stuff with that. So that would be my second one.
Good point. Bill?
I'm going to say Disco Season 3 and Strange New Worlds. I didn't know I needed a Pike show in my life until they told us we were getting Captain Pike in Disco Season 2. So I can't wait. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Larry?
Oh, I might stretch. So Lower Decks, because I'm so thrilled to see an animated show and hit the young adult, hit the kid market, and start growing our Trek fan base without mere reproduction, and I'm excited for all of them, but I'm really excited for what's happening with Discovery Season 3, because I think it's a chance to redeem. I don't mean redeem all the birth troubles of Discovery that have led to the way it is. I'm excited for them to be able to try to redeem that in a lot of people's eyes, maybe, and get more people excited. But I'm excited for Pike and the return to old school Star Trek, and I just want to show people that all these different flavors, break people out of this logjam of thinking and show that we're talking about buffet of podcasts, buffet of actual Star Trek.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Cirroc? Which two are you most looking forward to seeing?
I'm looking forward to seeing this third season of Discovery, because it's going to be on a new journey, and I want to see where they're going to take it on this new step. And then the new DS9 series, which is coming out, Deep Space 11.
Nice.
Nice.
That's what I'm starting that rumor here and now. So, yeah,
Great.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Great. Seasons 8 through 12 coming soon.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody very much. For those of you watching at home, check out the description box below, and we'll have all the information on these fine panelists and all of their podcasts, their websites, their shoe size, whatever you need. I would like to thank very much Larry Nemecek, Jarrah Hodge, Brandon-Shea Mutala, Bill Smith, Cirroc Lofton, was it? Really appreciate you guys taking the time and answering our questions and laughing with us. It's been an awesome time. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, guys.
Live long and prosper.
And
Hello, everybody.
everybody at home, we'll see you on the next one. Bye.